Good afternoon, students. Welcome to your English class. Today, you will be reciting the first three stanzas of the poem Apostrophe to the Ocean, and also you will be learning the paraphrase along with the difficult words. This is the poem written by George Gordon Byron. So let us once again recapitulate few important informations regarding the poet. Poet George Gordon Byron, he was born in 1788 in England, and George Gordon Byron, he was popularly known as Lord Byron. He was one of the leading poets of Romantic era. Now, the themes of the poem. I have already said you all that this poem, Apostrophe to the Ocean, it's an extract from the poem Childe Harold's Pilgrimage. In these lines of Childe Harold's Pilgrimage, the poet engages with themes of change, the sea, and power. This poem refers to the power of the sea as well as humankind's lack of power in the face of the indomitable ocean. It has raged the same since the dawn of creation, and no human force can control or tame it. This is something that brings the speaker great joy rather than fear. He relishes in the idea of what the ocean harbors and its ability to refuse humankind that which it desires. The sea represents true freedom to the speaker. It's untamed, pathless, and unpredictable. Like the woods in which no one has ever tread. By the end of the poem, Byron admits that things have changed. He and his speaker are not the same as they were at the beginning of the poem, at the beginning of Byron's journey, or at the beginning of life. It's time to move on, he says. So this poem is about the power of the sea, or we can say the power of an ocean. About the title, I would like to say few words. Apostrophe, we all know it's a punctuation mark used to indicate either possession or omission of letters or numbers. Here, apostrophe denotes what an ocean possesses. Ocean possesses power, might, aquatic plants, and animals. It is full of resources. Ocean currents govern the world's weather. So, in a word, we can say ocean is mighty and full of resources. Now let's recite the poem, first three stanzas, and then also let me explain it to you all. The first stanza in your book, actually it's the 178th stanza in Childe Harold's Pilgrimage. There is a pleasure in the pathless woods. There is a rapture on the lonely shore. There is a society where none intrudes, by the deep sea and music in its roar. I love not man the less, but nature more. From these our interviews, in which I steal from all I may be or have been before, to mingle with the universe and feel what I can never express, yet cannot all conceal. In the first line of this extract from the much longer Childe Harold's Pilgrimage, the poet's famed lines describe the peace Byron finds in nature. We know he was a romantic poet and lover of nature. In the unexplored and uncontrolled woods, he takes pleasure in the freedom and the lack of structure. It's there that he feels the most at home. He feels at home at nature. Despite how scary and isolating that natural landscape might seem. Out on the ocean, where most of this extract is focused, the speaker finds society or the togetherness that he is unable to find among people. So, it is clearly exposed or clearly displayed in this paragraph how deeply he was connected, the poet, he was connected with nature. There he finds peace. Where he finds peace? In nature. There is a traditional romantic idea, one that fills the last lines of this long poem. When he is by the sea, he finds that his love of nature is bolstered. What is the meaning of bolstered? Not comparable. So his love for nature is not comparable. It is higher than his love of man, but the latter also exists in him. From his time communing with nature, which is in its own way speaks back to him, he has come closer to the understanding the universe. Byron feels that a deep connection with the natural world is the only way one can truly understand humanity's purpose in the world. This stanza says us all these things. Now let's move to the next stanza. Let's recite first. Roll on, thou deep and dark blue ocean, roll. 10,000 fleets sweep over thee in vain. Man marks the earth with ruin. His control stops with the shore. Upon the watery plain, the wrecks are all thy deed, nor doth remain a shadow of man's ravage, save his own. When for a moment, like a drop of rain, he sinks into thy depth with bubbling groan, without a grave, unknelled, uncoffined, and unknown. The next stanza begins with a very clear apostrophe or address to something that cannot hear or respond to the speaker. In this case, the ocean. He encourages it to roll on and show its power. There is no human force that can command or control the ocean, despite the 10,000 fleets that have tried in vain to do so. Fleets means many ships together. Humanity might be able to alter the land, but its control stops with these shores. Means human beings cannot control the sea waves. They can control the shore, but not the water body. Ocean is something different, something that cannot be tamed. The next lines of the stanza reference the numerous losses that humankind has suffered in its quest to better understand the ocean. Ships and men have been lost as they seek out new passages through dangerous waters. The imagery at the end of this stanza is remarkable. So let's read the last two lines. Without a grave, unnailed, uncoffined, and unknown. Man is very trivial compared to the strength of the ocean, because when they try to explore the water body, they die without a grave, unnailed, uncoffined, and unknown. Let's read the next stanza, which is actually 180 stanza. And in your poem, this is the third one. His steps are not upon thy path, thy fells are not a spoil for him. Thou dost arise and shake him from thee, the wild strength he ills. For earth's destruction thou dost all despise. Spring him from thy bosom to the skies, and sendest him shivering in thy playful spray and hollowing to his gods, where haply lies his petty hopes in some near port or bay, and dashest him against to earth, there let him lay. The speaker continues to talk to the ocean in the next stanza. He described the ocean again as a contrast to the world on land. There, humanity walks on paths they made and takes their spoils from whales. This is not the way the ocean walks. When humankind comes to the ocean rises and shakes them from thee, humanity's wild strength, that which has been working steadily to destroy resources on land, is all the ocean despises. The ocean has no time or patience for humankind. It disposes of them who seek to travel on it as fast as it wants. The words playful and howling are interestingly juxtaposed in this stanza, suggesting that life and death are all a game. It's just a game for ocean. And once again in this stanza, it is proved that ocean is more powerful than humankind. So students, I hope you have understood these three stanzas. It's little bit difficult, but if you read it again and again, it will not be difficult at all. So I suggest you to recite these three stanzas and also to listen to the explanation. Now let's discuss the hard words or the new words. Rapture means extreme happiness and delight in something. Intrudes means put oneself deliberately into a place or situation where one is unwelcome or uninvited. Mingle means to mix. Conceal, not allowed to be seen or hide. Fleets, as I already said to you all, a group of ships sailing together. Vain means useless, producing no result. Wrecks, the destruction of a ship at sea, or you can say shipwreck also. Ravage means to destroy. Unknelled means unsummoned. Uncoffined, not buried. While extremely unpleasant or bad. Welts means controls. Despise, feel contempt or deep repugnance for. Spawning, turning away happily by any chance. So this much for today. I hope this presentation will help you to understand this poem, and once again suggest you to recite the poem again and again. So this much for today. Stay safe. Thank you, students.